All right, folks, thank you for joining us today. My name is Ben Aghion. I'm the head of education sales at Neverware, and we have Tom Woods on the line as well.
Hey, everyone. Good morning.
And today we'll be doing a presentation on Amplified IT's G Suite Health Check. So we're very excited to have you all on the line with us, and we'll go ahead and get started. We'd love throughout the presentation if you have any comments or want to shout out to Amplified IT or to Neverware, to tag us on Twitter, tag us with anything interesting, any questions you have or anything else. We will also be collecting questions throughout the presentation, which we'll get to at the end. So we encourage you to write in and look forward to seeing those. A little bit quickly about Neverware, for those of you who may not be familiar or who need a refresher. We build lightweight desktop operating systems specifically designed around security and manageability. We've been around for a little over 7 years, based in NYC, and our current flagship product is Cloud Ready, which turns old PCs and Macs up to 10 years old, and sometimes even older, into blazing fast new Chromebooks that can be managed in your Google admin console right alongside regular Chromebooks. We're working with just over 1,200 school districts throughout the U.S., including some of the largest and some of the smallest. We've grown tremendously in the last couple of years, along with the expansion of Google's ecosystem for school districts. And we're very excited to have partnered with Amplified IT and to be part of the overall solutions that they bring to school districts throughout the U.S., Canada, and elsewhere. For that being said, I'm going to switch things over to Tom Woods, and he's going to take you through G Suite Health Check. So thanks, Tom, for joining us, and thanks, everyone, for being here.
Great. Thanks, Ben. We'll just get the screen switched over here real quick. Great, and for everyone listening and watching today, we've got a bit.ly link to the slide deck URL for you today. It's bit.ly/G Suite Neverware, and that will be available to you during this broadcast, but also afterwards as reference, so that won't disappear. You'll be able to come back to this bit.ly link to check out any of the slides or links to any of the information that we have here for you today. Again, thanks, Ben, and my name's Tom Woods. I'm our lead Google for Education consultant here at Amplified IT. I've been working in educational IT for over 15 years and in IT in general for over 25 years. So I'm real happy to be here along with our friends at Neverware to discuss some best practices when it comes to G Suite and K-12 education. We're going to take a look at some items and aspects of the admin console that you can look through to make sure you're set effectively for the age of students and the staff that we have to work with in education, and make sure that you have the environment set appropriately and set you up for great success with G Suite. Amplified IT, if you're not aware, we're a technical consultancy company based out of Norfolk, Virginia. All we do is work with Google Cloud, Google for Education, and G Suite solely, and we only work with K-12 schools and school districts, primarily across North America and elsewhere. We have a few main services that we provide to schools and districts that we work with. Our Google for Education Audit service, which takes a look at all the settings in your admin console from top to bottom, comparing those against best practices. We sit down with you and review those recommendations and make a plan and a roadmap for where you can make changes to better set up the admin console in your G Suite environment for your staff and students, to kickstart services for schools just approaching or starting with G Suite and Google to get you set up and ready to go as a launch pad, to support and technical services of migrations, integration set up with Active Directory, student information systems, everything in between, as well as an Amplified Labs division that builds small, lightweight tools that fill gaps and provide efficiencies for G Suite administrators in education as well. We've worked from schools of all sizes and aspects, from individual schools of 50 students all the way up to large districts in the US and Canada with over 500,000 students. And as we get started, just a reminder, please take in and absorb this information, but we don't recommend people be in their admin consoles making changes as we go through the best practices and tips here. Take the information in, take some time to have some discussions internally with your IT teams and the people back at your school or district before making any changes, especially changes that could have an impact on the staff and students. We don't want to be disruptive at any point if we can help it. So to start off, in our experience over the last 5 or 6 years working with K-12 schools and working with Google Apps for Education, and now called G Suite, is that there's definitely some commonalities as far as what we see with the schools and districts we work with. Common things like little to no planning for the Google and G Suite environment. You know, someone started up this G Suite environment or created the account, you know, a few years ago. Perhaps that person's not even at the school or district anymore. No one sat down and put any planning into this, how it was going to be used, how it needed to be configured, what settings needed to be looked at, what apps and services would be made available to students and staff, how apps and extensions would be rolled out. So just making sure that there's a plan in place, that the stakeholders are brought together, whether that be the IT department and curriculum program staff especially, principals, anyone that could be a stakeholder, making sure plans are put in place to have a successful and effective rollout and use of G Suite and Google Cloud in general. One of the other things we see is an inefficient or poor organizational unit structure in Google, or perhaps a direct mirror of Active Directory, either by choice or due to Google Cloud Directory Sync being configured to actually sync organizational units from Active Directory to Google. In a lot of cases, your Active Directory OU structure is great for Active Directory, the way we work with users, workstations, computer and user group policies and things like that, but it isn't necessarily conducive to the best way to administer and manage G Suite. So there's definitely an OU structure that works best for G Suite. We're going to take a look at that in a few minutes. A lot of the default settings are left unchanged. Again, someone started up G Suite, no one's taken the time to look through all the different high-level and very deep granular settings. There's hundreds and hundreds of settings in the admin console itself. They tend to change quite frequently. We've been tracking and seeing typically over 200 changes to the admin console each year, let alone all the different Chrome management setting changes that we would expect as Chrome grows and becomes more robust. Making sure we're taking a look at those settings, doing our due diligence to ensure that those settings are set properly, safely, and effectively for the staff and students. And then again, along the same lines, sometimes a lack of a plan and a roadmap looking forward. You know, maybe we did a fairly decent job at getting G Suite and Google up and running for the school or district a year or two ago, but what are the plans over the next 2 to 3 years? We work with a lot of schools and districts through our audit service and otherwise through our other support services to help them plan where they want this system to go, what the adoption is going to look like, what the growth is going to look like, and what are the opportunities that it may afford us going forward in the future. Again, one of the main challenges and hurdles we have to overcome is the G Suite environment that we get has not been set up for education. We basically inherit more of a G Suite for business or G Suite for work set of default settings, and many of the districts and schools we work with and perform audits on have a lot of those settings still at the defaults. No one's gone through them, no one's checked them, and there's a lot of things that students have that they shouldn't have, or things that they're not getting, some benefits and opportunity to curate the environment and make it more dynamic for the staff and students. So we really want to make sure we take a look at all that. And that is the basis of our Google for Education audit service, is to make sure all those settings are set appropriately and changed from their defaults. One of the biggest challenges with G Suite and Google in general, as I said, is just staying up to date. We see all these changes to the admin console throughout the year. The rest of the tool set itself in G Suite goes through a lot of iterative change from Google. A couple different links here that you can utilize if you're not using them already. The release calendar is a great resource. That is a calendar where Google posts when new features, new services are going to be released, and whether they're going to follow the rapid release schedule or they're going to follow the scheduled release. That's the top image here on the screen. You can, in the bottom corner of that image, choose to add that to your own Google Calendar as a layer, so you don't have to continually check the website. It'll just be visible as an overlay layer in your own Google Calendar, which is a great way to do it. There's the G Suite Updates blog. That's a great resource. We use that very heavily to stay on top of Google's announcements, when they're making changes, what features, what new releases are coming out. There's usually a lot of detailed information in those blog posts about who it affects, what the rollout plan is and how quickly that rollout plan will take place. In the admin console itself, under reports, we have an area called Manage Alerts, and I'll just show you that real quick while we're here. That's a great little hidden gem. This is a area in the admin console called Manage Alerts where Google's built a lot of predefined monitoring pieces that can generate instant email notifications when events happen. So coming into this area, taking a look at what's available, great things like Apps Outage Alert, that's basically the same thing as the Apps Status Dashboard website where Google posts when, Google Sites is having a problem or Google Drive is having an issue. Instead of having to check that all the time, you can proactively have this email you notifications when there's a problem. Perhaps putting the entire IT department or a Google group email address for the IT department in here so that all of your IT staff are receiving that notification on their mobiles, on their cell phones before they even walk into your schools would be a great thing. Watching suspicious login activity and getting notifications when you may possibly have compromised accounts, especially for students. Monitoring changes to Gmail settings, Google Drive settings. If we're delegating certain permissions in the admin console to our IT staff, that's great, but do we want to know as administrators or managers when they're going in and changing settings that they maybe shouldn't be adjusting? And lastly, we run a great community called our Google for Education collaborative groups across North America, in Canada and the US. They're statewide or province-wide groups that get together 3 times a year and have a day meeting around all these things, staying up to date on Google, what's changed, what's new, discussing regional issues and challenges and struggles that they're having and solutions. We have Google representatives a lot of the times in there in person or over Hangouts, bringing the roadmap and what's coming next with Google, and there's a great Google Plus community as well for those collaborative groups where they stay in touch throughout the year in between those in-person meetups. So the OU structure we mentioned is super important. Here's a little bit of a generic recommended OU structure, our best practice OU structure. This gets customized and will change per each district we work with according to their initiatives and goals, but in a general sense, this has a lot of the major pieces that we'd want to look for. One of the major things we want to see off of the root of the structure is an immediate staff and student split. So having a staff OU and having a student OU. That speaks so well and is so conducive to how we manage Google in the admin console. If you think about the 10 or 11 core services, the 50 some additional services, even just going through those, the first question we're going to ask is, are staff going to get this, yes or no? Are students going to get this, yes or no? And we can answer those questions easily in one place, in one click. That will inherit down the structure to all of our staff or all of our students, into the hundreds of thousands. If students are not going to get Google Plus, we turn that off at the student OU and they're covered. So that allows us to do a lot of that heavy lifting right here at that level. Where we see districts going possibly a little bit wrong is the first piece they may have off the root is a list of their schools, and that could be 50 schools, 100 schools or more, and then underneath each school they have staff and student OUs. If we need to set something just for staff or set something just for students, as you can imagine, now we have to do it in 50 different places or 100 different places because we don't have that separation of staff and students. Those are our main 2 types of users in a G Suite education system, so it makes a lot of sense to structure it that way. Underneath staff really comes down to picking an OU structure that makes sense for you operationally. Anytime you feel you're going to need to give different settings in the admin console to a particular type or job role of people, then you're going to need an OU for that. Having an OU for the IT department is super important. We do a lot of things at that OU for certain services and abilities. Perhaps having an OU for your district office staff so you can give them slightly different settings, services. Maybe it's Chrome apps and extensions. Having teachers or faculty under one OU, we typically treat all of our teachers when it comes to Google the same, and we can apply the same settings to all of them. We don't tend to see too much of a need to break our teachers down school by school when it comes to G Suite administration. Maybe an OU for school administrators as well. More importantly, coming down to the student OU, we have all the large pieces and big policy decisions we've done at the student OU already, turning services on or off. Then we get down into, I guess, what you could call the divisions, elementary, middle if you have that, high school. That allows us to do a lot of great things, whether that's a walled garden approach, if we want a K-5 walled garden for Gmail or for Drive to make it internal only. We do that at the elementary OU, covers all of our K-5 students regardless of how many elementary schools we have, and we're done. If we want it perhaps to be a K-8 walled garden approach, we set it at elementary, set it at middle, and off we go. Maybe at the high school OU, we're setting certain Chrome apps and extensions that we only want to force install out to high school students, and therefore they're not being given out to the elementary students. So you can kind of see the value of having those divisions there. We break that down to school OU below that, and there's an opportunity to do things at a school level, whether that's requests from principals to have certain apps or extensions or services available to their students. It's a great OU structure in the school OU to place Chromebooks, whether that be Chromebook carts, and maybe even having some sub-OUs below the school for one-to-one, for Chromebook carts that are shared, for signage Chrome bits. If we have cloud-ready devices that we've purchased with management licenses, then they're going to live in the OU structure as well, just like real Chromebooks. We can place those cloud-ready devices in the same way in these school OUs or other shared or one-to-one OUs below, and we can affect device level settings on those cloud-ready devices as well. Breaking it down further, down to grade, gives us a great level of granularity, being able to facilitate requests from teachers. Teachers have great ideas. They want certain things just for their class or grade. We don't have to say, no, sorry, we can't do that because we'd have to turn something on for the whole school. We can do it just for a 4th grade or 5th grade OU and apply that at that level. And those settings remain fairly static. We're going to bring students through this structure from one year to the next. They'll inherit and disinherit various settings, and we don't have to continually come in here and adjust settings on a year-by-year basis. So a lot of our settings in this green area are going to remain pretty static, and that's what we want. For automating user provisioning with GCDS or other third-party tools, we'd stop most likely at the grade level, and those tools will look after moving the students each year and progressing them through to the next grade. If you're in more of a manual mode, CSV importing, it's your job to move students in the summertime each year, then we'd recommend a graduation year OU within the grade as more of a vessel or a bucket to carry those students, to contain them from getting mixed together. You can pick up that grad year OU and move it to the next grade each summer, and that makes that very easy. We've got a few other workflow OUs around life cycle management of graduates, whether that be 8th grade or 12th grade graduates leaving our school or district, offboarding them, giving them an opportunity to get their data out of the system, having things like Google Takeout on this OU and the new transfer service and takeout, maybe having a reduction of services on this OU since they're not your students anymore. If they've gone out the door, we could reduce the amount of services and bring it down to just the basics like Gmail, Drive, and contacts and calendar, things like that. Long-term suspended account management, and obviously a sandbox of test OUs. We've got a walkthrough video you can check out later there by that link, explaining all that in maybe a little bit more detail. Why is that OU structure so important to us? Again, it is our sole and only way to manage G Suite in the admin console. All the services, all the granular settings are applied on an OU basis. So therefore it becomes very important to make sure that OU structure is going to work well for us. And that's everything from organizing our users, where our staff, where our students are going to live in the structure, and therefore what services, what Chrome settings they're going to get, turning on or off major services like Hangouts or Google+, or Gmail restrictions or walled garden approaches by OU, makes things very easy at that point. And then of course, we do a lot in our everyday work with Chrome management, whether that's managing Chromebooks, whether that's managing cloud-ready devices and Chrome operating on those, as well as the desktop browser on Windows and Mac. We want to make sure we curate those environments well so that our students get a seamless transition from device to device and can be device agnostic, and their world and their environment and their experience just follows them everywhere they go, including possibly going home and signing into Chrome on a home device as well. How do we then get our users provisioned or created into G Suite effectively? Everything from creating them individually or manually. There's a CSV import option in the admin console that we can utilize that works very well for a small amount of users. There's the APIs with Google, and whether that's custom scripting of your own using Google Apps Manager, or perhaps any third-party tools that would access the APIs can do so. create users, move them, suspend them, manage them, reset passwords, possibly create Google Groups and manage the group membership as well. And then we have very common tools like Google's free offering, Google Cloud Directory Sync, and the link is there to that. That is your tool for synchronizing with Active Directory. It installs locally on a machine within your walls, reads your Active Directory setup, and is configured to take that, understand it, translate it, and then move over to Google to the APIs and do its work of creating users, managing, creating groups and group membership, and a few other pieces as well. We also have a service, a custom service that we work with a lot of schools and districts on called our Google for Education Sync service, and that's leveraging or utilizing your student information system to potentially provision users and groups. For some districts, they don't have Active Directory, or there's a lack of users or students in Active Directory, or a lack of information, or there's just a want or need to use the student information system to supplement some of the other provisioning or to do all of the provisioning. And that can include creating users, populating additional attributes for those users in G Suite, putting in their grade, their school, their teacher name, their homeroom, lots of great information, perhaps a student ID can all be populated into the extra attributes in the schema of G Suite. We can customize this tool to do pretty much anything you can think of that the APIs support, including group management and other custom operations. So that is another option if you feel you want to leverage your student information system to do your provisioning as well, and there's more information via that link there below. Admin roles determine who can do what in the admin console. So that's the gatekeeper. That is determining who we're allowing to come into the admin console and do these type of operations. In admin roles, we have a lot of pre-built roles from Google here at the top, super admin, groups, users, services, etc. They're great. We have to be careful. They have certain privileges that have been set and they're locked in and we cannot change them or edit them. One of the biggest risks we see here in admin roles for schools is over provisioning. You know, dropping someone into user management because they need to reset passwords does get that job done, but that person can also create users, move users, delete users. You know, it's too much. If possible, we want to always create a custom role and give it just the privileges it's going to need and assign the people to that, and possibly even down to the OU level where they need it only. So always start with the minimum someone needs to get a job done and then work it up from there. When it comes to something like super admin, again, we need to be cautious. That admin role can do everything, but more importantly also, it can break everything. We don't need 12 super admins at any district, even for large districts we've worked with in the country. We recommend 4 to 5 super admins at the most. It's not something you need every day, even though you may feel you do. Have a regular G Suite account. It can be in groups, users, services. That's less risky. You can get 90% of your tasks done during the day. You're not going to walk away from a machine and leave yourself signed in as a super admin. And then the odd time you do need super admin, you're going to open up Incognito, sign in with a separate super admin account, do a task, close it, get out of there, and you're not leaving any footprint, cache, browser history, anything like that behind, and you're not leaving yourself signed in. Also a great recommendation to have two-step verification turned on that separate super admin account as well. Adds another nice extra layer of security to that. So let's not have too many admins. Let's make sure we're assigning them appropriately. We're not over provisioning, and let's create custom roles with just the privileges people need and a minimalistic approach to get the job done. And where possible, assign those on a per OU basis. If someone needs those abilities just at their school, let's assign it just at the school level. We're going to take a look next here at Google Groups and hopefully clear up some confusion possibly on Google Groups. It's always been a bit of a confusing topic. Google Groups themselves, why do we need them? At their core, a Google Group pretty much by default will do a lot of these different things. It can be a distribution list for Gmail. We can use it for cloud print sharing. We can use it to invite large groups of people or numbers of people to a calendar event. Teachers could possibly use it to invite students to a Google Classroom class. We use it for file sharing in Google Drive, and importantly now as well, it could be a very important mechanism in setting up our team drive permissions appropriately and in a dynamic way so that we're not dealing with individual people one by one on team drive permissions. So there's a lot of great reasons to use Google Groups. Our groups live here in the console. They don't reside in any OU. They are just there at the domain level, and these are our groups here. We can create groups here in the console, and they will do all those things I just mentioned pretty much out of the box by creating them. Where the confusion usually comes into place is then on top of that we have a core service called Groups for Business. That Groups for Business core service isn't needed to do any of those functions we just spoke of. Sometimes there's some misconceptions that our staff and students require or need Groups for Business to use a Google group, and that's not true. They can email it typically, they can use it for document sharing. That'll all work without Groups for Business. Groups for Business sits on top of those Google groups and provides basically additional features through a web page interface. So if you're in a group, you can then go to the web page interface, and there could be a lot of different features potentially, like forums, different discussion forums, web forum, Q&A forum, where you'd post topics and have discussions back and forth, collaborative inboxes, message archive history of previous messages sent to that group, features like that. So we have a lot of great conversations with the schools we work with on whether they feel those features in Groups for Business are needed or necessary for their staff and students. Are they going to be utilized? Are they currently being utilized? If not, or there's no need to have those, a lot of times we look at maybe disabling Groups for Business for the staff and students, as having it when it's not necessary can lead to some problems as well, and people can get into a little bit of trouble through that interface, especially if the groups themselves are not configured very well. Then that can open the door to some misbehavior. To make things a little bit more confusing, there's also another Google Groups mentioned under Additional Services. And that Google Groups under Additional Services has nothing to do really with your Google Groups here in the domain. It's actually the public Google Groups that Google runs out there on the cloud, on the internet, and it comes from a lot of old Usenet groups and other aspects, and there are different Google groups there, some of them being a little bit adult content oriented, so we want to be careful. We typically recommend that not be on for students, and take a good look at it before you would maybe even enable that for staff. Do your staff need to participate in those public Google groups with their school or district account, or do you want to turn that off and let them do that with a personal Gmail account or through some other method? How are groups provisioned and managed? Again, we can create groups through Groups for Business. Through that Groups for Business web page interface, there can be a Create Groups option that may be on right now for your staff and students, and maybe that's what you want, maybe it's not. Do you want staff and students creating domain-level Google Groups that everyone could potentially see and use? That can definitely be turned off under the group settings. Those groups are unique in that when they're created through Groups for Business, they're identified as such and are a little bit slightly different than the admin, or what's called admin created groups. Admin created Google Groups are done by administrators through the console like we just looked at. Any tool accessing the APIs, GCDS or GADS syncing through the APIs create admin created groups, as well as our scripting with GFE sync through the APIs would be considered admin created groups as well. If any of these automatic tools and through the API access with GCDS, if you want to manage groups, they have to be an admin created group. A tool like GCDS cannot manage a Groups for Business and user created group and cannot automatically manage the membership for that group. We also have a quick link here to one of our Amplified Labs tools called GroupGator. The solution that provides and the problem it solves is delegating group membership down to a school level. If there's groups at a school level, the math club, the track and field team that centrally IT can't manage, we won't know who's supposed to be in those groups. There won't be any information in the SIS system to direct us. We kind of need someone at the school, whether that be an office coordinator or a particular teacher, to manage the group membership. Rather than giving that person at the school the Groups for Business service, teaching them how to use the interface, having them go in there to manage the membership of the group, GroupGator gives you an interface through Google Sheets. So through a Google Sheets spreadsheet, that teacher at the school can go into the spreadsheet, add names, remove names, click a button, and the membership in the background is automatically modified and adjusted. They don't need Groups for Business. They don't need admin console access. They can understand it very easily in a Google Sheets interface, and off they go. The best part is the person doing that management doesn't have to be a manager or owner or even a member in the group at all. Therefore, they don't need to be in the group and receive all the emails and document shares that maybe that secretary or librarian doesn't really need to receive. So you can check that out through that link, and that may fill that gap for you if you're looking for that. So when it comes to those core apps and additional services, we want to make sure we're taking the time to look through those. And we work with a lot of schools in our audit service to go through 50-some additional services, all the core apps, make sure they're set appropriately. Whether you're getting an audit from us or not, please take the time, if you haven't, to sit down with the right team members on your staff and go through that. And that could involve the curriculum program department as well, and try to build that bridge and get them involved. What should be on for students? What should be off? Have we gone through those additional services? They're not covered under the privacy and support agreement with G Suite for Education. They're the same services, the additional services that the rest of the world uses. They have their own terms of service. We want to make sure we're being safe with those, and we don't have services on for students that aren't appropriate and that shouldn't be there. So take the time, go through the admin console. A lot of the core services have a few pages of different granular settings. Some of the additional services have settings as well, and we want to make sure we go through those. Some typical things to give you a few best practice insights from our audit that we look at when we work with schools. Something like Gmail, there's a great ability within Gmail to scan student emails for objectionable content. We recommend doing that under Gmail settings through the content compliance section. And what that allows us to do is, as students send emails, we're scanning the body for particular words, for certain phrases or sentences. We can use regular expressions as a formula to very efficiently cover hundreds of thousands of permutations of those, let's say, nasty, vulgar words that kids may use, no matter how they're spelling them, what strange characters they may throw in. And using content compliance, we can capture those emails. We can have them do a few things. They could be rejected and bounce back to the student. We feel that's not super effective, but that's an option. We can have those go to a quarantine area, where then someone checks that quarantine area and then takes actions on that. Or to take it a little further, we could get to a point where those emails are redirected to the school administrators, to the principals, to the people at the schools that can then take action and get involved in the digital citizenship at the school, which is a great thing. So there's an opportunity to take advantage of there. That's free, that's built into the console, and you can do that today without purchasing anything extra or third party, and be monitoring what's happening in student emails. That could be inappropriate language, that could be student welfare and safety oriented, whatever you want to scan for. When it comes to Google Drive settings, something like creating a walled garden approach, and walled garden is the term that we use for it, but really what we're talking about is restricting sharing to and from the outside world in Google Drive. So if we take a look at that, and my apologies, strange timeout there, let me get back in. When we take a look at Google Drive settings, we want to make sure we're looking at our student body and deciding perhaps at what level would we want this to be internal only. The settings are there, because they're there, do we have a responsibility? Should we be looking at controlling that for K-5 students, K-8, even possibly K-12? There's districts and schools out there, that are doing a K-12 walled garden for both Gmail and Drive with little issues. So under sharing for Google Drive, we could go to our student elementary OU, targeting our K-5 students, and then turn off Drive sharing, making sure we're getting the extra checkbox here. This setting by default would look like that when we switch it to off. This checkbox is saying that external people can still share files into your students, and that's arguably the more dangerous one. We want to make sure we turn that off so that we have a full and complete block of all sharing and collaboration to the outside world for these students. We could set this at middle, it would then be K-8, or we could set it at the student OU and it would be a full K-12. Google Calendar is one of the larger culprits for those poor default settings that we kind of inherit from Google and from the Google for Work side. And I would probably wager that 80–90% of the audits we do, these calendar settings are still set to their defaults, and a lot of times those administrators of G Suite are unaware that this is happening. And what we're talking about here primarily is this internal sharing option for primary calendars. The default setting for this is share all information, and that's the way it comes when you spin up a G Suite account for your district or school. This means that all students could see the details of every teacher's calendar. They can go to add a coworker under Google Calendar, type in a teacher's name, and up comes their calendar with full details, and that's the default setting. Not very good for students to be able to see that, maybe possible personal information of our teachers and staff. We recommend changing this down to free busy. There's nothing wrong with students, nothing dangerous with students seeing free or busy on the calendar for anyone, and it actually affords us a nice benefit. Teacher-to-teacher planning is pretty easy. You don't have to explicitly share your calendar with me, and I can look and see when you're probably available to book a meeting. So that can be very useful. Classroom creation is another quick one we can take a look at. This is definitely a default setting that gets left behind and sometimes never gets changed. Here under Google Classroom, one of the main settings we have under General is who can create classroom classes. And the default here is all pending and verified, and it came that way from Google when they rolled Google Classroom out to everyone. I think in the interest of teachers being able to start immediately and create classes and IT not being a hold up to that, they left it at this setting. Basically, when people go to the classroom site and it says, are you a teacher or are you a student? You click on I'm a teacher and it sends a join request to the classroom teachers Google group. Ideally, we're supposed to be approving those join requests, getting our staff and teachers put into that Google group proper, which is even more important nowadays. The Guardian feature will not work for teachers if they're not in the group proper. But the problem is students can go to the classroom website, they can click on the I'm a teacher button, they become pending, and according to this default setting, those students can immediately create classes. We have a report in our audit of Google Classroom classes we see that students have created. You know, they could create that class, invite a handful of their friends into that classroom class and be having private conversations that you're not monitoring. So changing this to verified teachers only is important. That will keep the students out and from creating classes. But now be careful, the onus is now on you to make sure teachers get put into the group proper. They will not be able to create a class at all until you approve them or through other proactive means like syncing with Active Directory or other scripting, put teachers directly into the classroom teachers group. One other feature under the now called directory service, used to be called contacts, is a few profile editing options. We can restrict users, or let's say students especially, under the directory service from editing their name or changing their name. That used to be a Google Plus setting. It's now found here. That's an important one. And probably more important on the student side is you can prevent students from changing their profile photo. We do have schools telling us that, you know, they have students that pick inappropriate profile photos, and for the longest time there was a wish and a need to be able to prevent that. The setting's now here to prevent them from changing that circular profile pic on their account. Chrome management being super important, we want to make sure we're looking through all the different Chrome management settings, and that is a large topic. We don't have time to go super deep into that today, but whether it's Chrome user settings, you know, those can affect everything from the desktop browser on Windows and Mac to our Chrome devices, Chromebooks, Chromeboxes, to our cloud-ready devices that we have management licenses for or not. Chrome user settings would apply to all those. When the user's signing into Chrome on the desktop browser or signing onto a Chromebook or signing onto a cloud-ready device, they're automatically signed into the browser, and a lot of the settings on this page could and will take effect. So everything from force installing apps and extensions, curating that environment, giving people the things they're going to need so our staff and students have the tools that they're after, to restrictive things like turning off incognito mode for students, preventing students from clearing their browser history, pushing out bookmarks, pushing out home pages and additional tabs in Chrome. It's all here. There's many, many settings on this page to go through. Under Chrome device settings, we want to do a few things like making sure we're restricting sign-in to just users within our district or school. So we can put in our domain names for G Suite. No personal gmail.com accounts are allowed to sign into those Chrome devices or cloud-ready devices. No other older siblings, college accounts, or anything like that. We can restrict sign-in to just those accounts. Autocomplete domain allows us to pre-populate the sign-in screen on Chrome devices and cloud-ready devices so that our domain name is already pre-populated. Our younger primary students don't have to type all of that in, just their username, which is great, saves them a lot of time and hassle. We definitely want to take advantage of those settings. Again, enforcing and monitoring digital citizenship is important, and there's tools here at our disposal to do that. We took a look at the Gmail scanning through content compliance. This link will take you to a Google Sheet with sample, starting point, regular expressions that came from our collaborative groups, from your peers to get you started on doing that. They're fantastic. There's also a regular expression generator on that spreadsheet where you just type in the word and it creates the regex for you. If we want to get into Google Drive scanning files and documents in Google Drive for objectionable content, IEP information being improperly shared, student welfare, credit card numbers, everything in between, that's going to require us investing in a third-party tool. There's nothing built into the console for that, so we'd have to make an investment into something like a Better Cloud or SysCloud to do that kind of interrogation of Google Drive. We talked a little bit today about that walled garden approach. That's very important to us here at Amplified IT. We're big proponents of that. We think there's an opportunity to do that. We should be doing that as schools and districts, making Gmail internal only, sending and receiving only with other staff and students within our school or district, turning off drive sharing like we looked at so that they can only collaborate, share, and receive files from people within the school or district are important pieces to get set up to curate a proper G Suite environment for education. Real quick mention of Google Vault. Google Vault for a long time now has been free for education. That's great. Making sure you've gone in there and actually set retention periods. We come across a lot of schools that don't have any retention set, meaning they're losing data. After the 25-day cache period that Google gives us in the console to undelete emails and drive files for people, if they've deleted them and permanently dumped them out of the trash can after the 25 days, they are permanently expunged and gone for good, and we can't get those back. So you may be leaking district data if you do not have retention policies set for mail and drive in Vault. That can be indefinite because that's there. We get free unlimited indefinite storage, which is pretty amazing. If you're going to pick an actual retention period like 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, then take a very close look at the expunging options and be aware of what's going to happen when those options get reached. Google Vault is not a second copy of users' data. It is pointed directly at their live Gmail box in Google Drive. And if you set expunging options, it will remove that content directly out of the user's mailbox in Google Drive. We also want to make sure we're not deleting user accounts if we're expecting to retain things in Vault because it is pointed at the user themselves. The user account has to exist or at least be suspended in order for the data to be in Vault. So taking a look through those policies is going to be super important for you. And as I wrap up and toss it back over to Ben here, a lot of the things we look through today come from our Google for Education audit, looking at those best practices and those settings in your admin console, but obviously those were just a few. That's, as we say, the tip of the iceberg. There are hundreds and hundreds of settings, policy settings, Chrome settings in your admin console. We go through them all in a very thorough process from top to bottom. We summarize all that into our audit document, 60 to 70 pages that we give to you explaining what changes we recommend you make, why we recommend those changes, what the best practice or use case revolves around given your goals and initiatives at your school or district. There's information there on how to make those changes. We always want to empower schools at Amplified IT. We give you the links, the information, the resources on how to then go after this audit and make those changes yourself. And we also have support hours if you need assistance implementing those changes, don't have the bandwidth or time or capacity to do that yourself. So if you're interested in our audit service, we'd love for you to get a hold of us. Click on that link below and let us know, and we'll jump on a quick call and do an overview with you and let you know what that would look like for your school or district. There's some other information here on the other slides. I'm not going to go through them all. We do certified administrator boot camps all over North America, getting people ready to take the certified administrator exam, and part of that boot camp is to do the exam and pass it that day and have a real high success rate. If you want any more information on that, there's a bit.ly here at the bottom of the screen. And I think with that being said, I'm going to turn it back over to Ben, and we're going to hopefully have a few minutes here for some Q&A if we need it.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. And thank you for taking us through that. I think mostly I want to open up for questions for all of the folks here. But obviously a great series of services that you guys offer, and some great tips even in this short period that I think you're able to share. So we have a couple of questions. I'd encourage you guys to keep pouring them in, but I'll start off with a question for you, Tom, that came in, which is, asking about the differences and benefits of Team Drive versus standard Google Drive folders.
Yeah, that's a great question. So Team Drive's been around since the spring or so, but it's got a lot of potential. It's a great tool. Really what Team Drives is Google Drive space kind of in the cloud that doesn't have any ownership. Classic problem previously was someone always had to own the files or documents or folders. They had to live in someone's personal My Drive, and then you could share them out to the finance department or to a group of teachers, but there was an inherent danger in that if you were to forget that that was done and a few years later delete that person's G Suite account because they left the school or district, you would potentially lose that information and you wouldn't realize that it was shared with multiple people. In Team Drive, the data is not owned by anyone. It's a lot safer. The permissions on Team Drive allow us to set everything from view and comment to edit to full access. Your typical person should just get edit, and an edit permissioned user cannot actually delete files or move files or folders around in the Team Drive. So it's inherently a lot safer. People aren't going to muck around with the structure. They're not going to mistakenly delete files like they may do now in regular Google Drive or in your network file shares. It's a great place to look at possibly moving your old school server network file shares, NTFS file shares that you're using now for staff or even students up to Team Drive. It makes them more accessible. They're technically accessible anywhere rather than just on your network through Active Directory like they maybe were in the past. And using Google Groups, you can set those Team Drive permissions. Team Drive pairs really well with Drive File Stream as well to give you an instant connection on a Windows or Mac machine with a mapped drive letter. Let's say in Windows Explorer, My Computer, that would take you right to that Team Drive. And to those users, they can open up even Office documents, PDFs or otherwise, just like it was a network drive or a flash drive and not notice much difference. So there's a lot of great opportunity for districts to take advantage of that for sure.
And the quick follow-on to that is does any file share to a Team Drive then become owned by that Team Drive?
Yeah, technically Google states that they're owned by your G Suite account, if you could call it that, you know, the admin console, your account itself. There's no defined listed owner. Therefore, if any users of any sort get deleted, the Team Drive, you know, will not disappear. Through the admin console, administrators always have a method to see all the Team Drives and quickly add themselves into the permissions list if they want to go browse that Team Drive and take a look at the files and information. So things are pretty safe.
Right. And we have another question, which is one administrator set their retention for 10 years, but is concerned that if the teacher deletes their emails, do they disappear forever?
That's a great question. So as we said with Google Vault, we have to be careful. If they've set it for 10 years, the next question is, what are the expunging options set to? There's two options. One of them is the strongest option, which probably is what most districts need to really fulfill their policy requirements, and that says when we get to that 10-year period, let's say for emails, if that's the conversation here, they will be permanently expunged, meaning any emails that's 10 years plus a day old will totally disappear from everyone's inbox. Not just what they've deleted, don't forget that. This has to do with retention overall. You're saying as a district, we do not want to keep anything past 10 years. So even existing inbox emails or any labeled emails that are 10 years plus a day will disappear and permanently expunge. And the same story would be for Drive files if it was a 10-year Google Drive retention. So people sometimes confuse it and they think the retention only has to do with deleted items, but in that case, it's everything. The other expunging option is only do that permanent expungement if the user deleted or basically dumped it out of the trash can during that 10-year period. In other words, if it's still sitting in their inbox or under some other label, leave it alone, but if they've purposefully deleted it and dumped it out of the trash can, to them, they've walked away from it and they think they've permanently deleted it, then remove it from Vault, and then that would happen. So that's kind of a halfway solution, but you know, in my eyes and our eyes, we feel that most districts kind of have a hard and fast retention or requirement countywide or even statewide, where typically that has to be a permanent expunging option. They're not supposed to have any record of it after that time period. So you want to be careful. Look into that with your legal teams or with the appropriate PII person at your district to make sure you've got it set appropriately.
Great. And there's a few more questions. I wanted to quickly address one, which is
sure.
about special console settings or things to know about managing cloud-ready devices. That's something which I can address real quick. I'm just going to pop over quickly to a actually a document that we've put together specifically to answer this question. And you know, the answer is most things are the same. What we've done everything that we can essentially to make it so that your management experience is the same with cloud-ready devices as it is with your regular Chromebooks. But there are some slight differences, mostly tied to the hardware itself, that are non-changeable. One is if there's a trusted platform module chip, and that exists in some of our certified models, but may not in others. We recommend contacting us if that's something that you're trying to get working or would like to know more about, but something to keep in mind since some folks do use that as an extra security precaution. And it's something which comes standard with regular Chromebooks. Forced re-enrollment is also something which is not relevant on cloud-ready, since power washing and device wipe are not functions that are possible. So if you are looking to, you know, to be mindful of this, we recommend that administrators secure the BIOS on their cloud-ready devices and disable any bootable media such as USBs or otherwise. And if necessary, you can reinstall from a USB stick and re-enroll, which is kind of our equivalent of power washing. Other than that, in particular, you know, kiosk mode and public sessions work fine on cloud-ready devices. They work the same as on your regular Chromebooks and are managed identically. The only last thing to really note is that user and device reporting, as far as the settings go, they're all the same. The only thing that doesn't translate through is anonymous metrics reporting. And if that's something that you use, we would love that feedback, because it's currently something that we have not included. There are a number of other questions, so I'm going to get back to those, but wanted to just address that real quick.
Great.
So let's see here. Can you please go over or give some details about what is on or is covered on the Certified Administrator exam?
Yeah, for sure. So that's a boot camp day class that we've been running for almost 2 years now. The Certified Administrator exam, as it sits today, is a generalized G Suite Administrator exam. So it's not EDU focused, the exam itself. It's more what you could call a Google for Work or a general G Suite administrative test or exam. It's a great exam. It's pretty unique. You actually, when you purchase that exam, get an entire G Suite account and admin console provision just for you for the test, and you work through some challenges and actually configure settings in a live admin console. So it's not multiple choice, which we think is fantastic. It's pretty real world. And in our bootcamp class, we spend better part of the day taking you through lots of different best practices and information around administration in the admin console and things you're going to need to know. Where we add the value is we're there in a group environment, which is great. It's all your K-12 peers. We present and train through that information with EDU best practices in mind. So we spend the whole day, you know, sprinkling in great best practices and tips around K-12 EDU, even though that won't necessarily be reflected on the exam. So you're going to gain all that great knowledge. And then around, you know, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we're through all the training material, and everyone sits and takes the actual exam. And with our bootcamp classes, the cost of that exam is included in the price, and we give you all the instructions and help to get all that provisioned and ready for that day for you to take the test. We've had a good 85 to 90% pass rate with the classes that we've ran over the last 2 years, and we've certified, I think, over 1,000 EDU G Suite administrators, which is fantastic. We're pretty proud of that.
Nice. Yeah, it's something I think just about any administrator could benefit from that's got Google in their environment.
Yeah, for sure. It's a great kind of segue too if we have, you know, a lot of technicians and staff in our IT departments that are a little bit more Microsoft oriented, and it's a challenge sometimes to get them on board with Google and G Suite. Microsoft people, you know, are no strangers to certification, and they like their certifications. You know, this can be a great bridge to get those staff on board. They get a certification for Google under their belt, feel a little bit more comfortable with it. So we see a lot of districts sending their teams to our boot camp days for that reason as well, which is great.
There's a few more questions, but I will just preempt by saying that we only have about four minutes or so left. So if there are any questions that don't go answered, we'll be sure to follow up with you all afterwards. We have the questions logged here. Additionally, someone asked for the URL for the bootcamp, and several people have asked for the slide presentation that we went through today, for the links that you included, Tom, and other things. We will be sharing that over the course of the next 1 to 2 days, as well as make available a recording of everything we've covered today. So just wanted to inform you all that will be made available. So I'll just go down. We can probably have time for just a couple more questions. One question that popped up was that you mentioned BetterCloud and SysCloud as some third-party audit tools, and this specific person is considering the general audit tool. Have you bumped into that tool, and is it comparable? Is the question.
Yeah, GAT, or General Audit Tool, is a little bit of a different tool. We have seen that tool a little bit and taken a look at that tool and the company that provides it. We've come across some districts that have used it. It can do quite a lot of things. What we find a little more popular is districts making sure they have someone on the team or multiple people with some capacity in Google Apps Manager or GAM scripting. That can be such a universal sort of Swiss Army knife to solve a lot of problems, do actions in bulk. That can be a great tool and skill. It's very similar to PowerShell scripting, so your Microsoft folks could probably wrap their head around it pretty quick. Just having a basic knowledge can be really helpful with that tool. What we talked about earlier during the presentation with BetterCloud, SysCloud, was a little bit more along the lines of compliance with Google Drive, scanning Google Drives for security and compliance, looking in files, documents, sheets, things like that, and that's where I was making reference to it. A product like BetterCloud also has an interface to do a lot of admin console tasks in a nice UI and in a bulk type of way and things like that. So we work with all those companies, all those vendors, so you can check us out through our website. Give us a call, let us know if you'd like to learn more about those tools. We like to sit down with districts and make sure they have all the information about what the various tools do and their features, walk through and work with you to figure out which one would work best, making sure that if there's money going to be spent on a third-party tool, that it's going to get used effectively. Nothing's worse than IT purchasing a tool and then it doesn't get utilized. So we want to make sure it gets set up with good best practices and there's a good plan in place to utilize that tool effectively, and that's where we like to focus on with the schools we work with.
Okay. I have another question here. How can we enable external applications to integrate with Classroom? That's a good question.
Yeah, that's kind of a tough question. I may not be the best person to answer that. We've got our support team that does a little bit more with the APIs and the Classroom interface. Our team of developers work with that on a daily basis. Andrew Stillman and our Amplified Labs team of developers do a lot with Classroom. We have our Little Sys tool and product that provisions classes into Google Classroom, rosters in all the students automatically, populates the Guardian feature, gives you insight into reports and usage of Google Classroom and all sorts of great things. So they're definitely our Classroom experts. I think given the time we have, and the best thing I could say is if the person who asked that wants to follow up more, give us a shout or through Neverware, get a hold of us, and we can get you in touch with people on our team that could dive into that a little bit deeper with you. There are APIs for Classroom, so there's definitely possibilities there to custom script stuff yourself or for any third-party company to do some possible integrations with Classroom. Google's putting a lot of work, including into this coming new year, on Google Classroom. There's more and more every day for that tool and that product, which is fantastic. So I think it's going to be an exciting year going forward in 2018 for Classroom for us.
And last question. I think there's one that just came in as well, and we'll have to take that one offline afterwards. But with a verified teachers only setting on Classroom, if you add a distribution group, which apparently is something this user reviews fairly regularly, rather than adding individual accounts.
Yeah, that's a great point. The answer is yes. Any existing Google groups that you already have can be nested into the Classroom teachers group. So you can nest in other Google groups. If you already have all teachers at this school or all staff or all teachers in the district, in Google Groups already, nest that group into the classroom teachers group, and basically you're done. As long as you're maintaining the membership of those subgroups, that's all going to roll up to the classroom group. The teachers are automatically going to be able to create classes and do the Guardian feature, and you'll be off to the races for sure. Great question.
Okay, so very final question, which is one I have for you that I think could be a cool tool for especially those new users of Cloud Ready and those who are adopting a Google environment. I'm familiar with a tool that you have called Centipede that you've developed to help districts enroll their devices, and which I've heard from several of our users they've used in order to enroll their Cloud Ready devices. And I would love, I just saw Arduino's rule come in as a comment, but would love would love if you describe that for folks here real quick, and and then we'll wrap.
Yeah, for sure, and that's great. We've got a pretty exciting following of G Suite administrators that just love this. We identified around a year ago, a really large pain point with districts, and that's the enrollment of large quantities of Chrome devices, Chromebooks, or even cloud-ready devices, into the thousands for a lot of districts, obviously. Touching each one, going through, connecting them to Wi-Fi, next, Control-Alt-D, putting in your account, putting in the password, jumping through all those hoops can suck up a lot of time for sure. So great, smart people on our team decided that there's probably a better way to do this. So they created a set of custom scripts. Now this is something we're giving away to schools for free because we recognize that this is such a struggle and a pain point. We want to help schools on this one. So through our Amplified Labs site, Centipede is the name, and you can go there, you download the Arduino scripts for free. Basically, you then go pick up Arduino microcontrollers. Those are on Amazon. We've got a link directly to that from our site. They're $9 each. That's pretty inexpensive. You grab 5, you grab 10, you give one to every technician for their toolkit, whatever the story is. Maybe you need a bunch for your summer help. You configure the custom scripts, you load them onto the Arduinos, and basically you take a cold Chromebook or cloud-ready device, you turn it on after a fresh install or power wash, and it's a keyboard emulator. It's going to sit there and it's going to select the Wi-Fi, put in your password. It's going to click next. It's going to agree to the license agreement. It's going to hit Control-Alt-D, put it in Enterprise Enrollment. It's going to put in your enrollment account email address. It's going to put in the password. It's going to enroll the thing totally hands-off. You can go do something else. You can go down the line, plugging in the next centipedes to the next units, come back a minute, minute and a half, 2 minutes later. It's done. You unplug it and move on to the next device. Great tool to give your technicians in their toolkit. Even in the course of a normal day, you've got a misbehaving Chrome device, you do a power wash or you wipe it out. Instead of sitting there for a couple minutes, you plug that thing in, go do something better with your time for a couple minutes, come back, and it's going to be re-enrolled and ready to go. So fantastic tool, basically free for everyone out there. Just go pick up the Arduinos, and that's all you need. The scripts are on our site, and we'd love for you to grab that and use it and save yourself some time, money, and hassle for sure.
And this can be used on any Chromebook, any cloud-ready device. I highly recommend it. We have someone here who just said they just Amazoned 5 Arduinos to do their next 70 cloud-ready installs. So
there you go.
nice to hear. I'll just reiterate. Thank you all for joining us. Please feel free to be in touch with us at sales@neverware.com, at Neverware on social media. And actually, we would love if you would ping us and give us some ideas for what you'd like to see on our next webinar. And likewise, if you'd if you have any content that you're looking for from Amplified IT, we would love to co-host another webinar with them and provide additional value to you all, our customers. So thanks, Tom, as well, for joining us and for your time and expertise.
That's great. Yeah, thanks very much, Ben. Thanks everybody out there. We hope that was helpful, and we look forward to possibly working with you in the future. That'd be great.
All right. Have a good one, everyone. Enjoy your Wednesdays.
Take care. Bye-bye.